let's cultivate our motivation. So in the Homage to Manjushri that we just recited, we're requesting him illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, awaken my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. So we don't actually need to request Manjushri to help from the side of a Buddha. The Buddhas automatically, spontaneously, effortlessly, without any thought, manifest to help us. But from our side, we need to request, because when we request, it shows that we are earnest. And that earnestness, that sincerity, is what makes us receptive to receiving the enlightening influence of the Buddhas. So here we see that although the Buddhas, from their side, lack any obstruction to helping us, the amount of help that we can absorb depends on us. If we are full of wrong views and anger and hostility, the Dharma teachings that the Buddhas are giving don't go inside of us at all. Whereas if we make our mind receptive through purifying negativities, accumulating merit, studying the teachings, doing our best to understand them, then the enlightening influence of the Buddhas can reach our mind. So it's a dependent arising, and we need to do our part. One of the factors that really makes our mind receptive to a Buddha's influence is when we generate bodhicitta. So the more we're able to turn our mind to the wish to benefit sentient beings and to lead them out of cyclic existence, the more we do that, the more actually our own mind becomes receptive to the Dharma. And the easier it is for us to understand and gain realizations. So generating bodhicitta helps not only others, but it helps us as well. So seeing that, then let's generate that precious mind, aspiring for full awakening for the benefit of all beings. So we do a lot of request prayers in Buddhism, asking for blessings, for inspiration, to understand the Dharma better, and so on. And it's easy from the wording of the prayers to think that we request the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then we sit back and they give us the realizations, or they bless our mind and like, whoa, now I got it. Yeah. But like anything else, receiving the influence of the holy beings is a dependent arising. And so we have to do our share. So it's kind of like that joke that you hear about somebody praying to God to win the lottery, and God responds, buy a ticket. Yeah. So it's like that. We can pray, but we have to do something from our side to create the cause. Okay. His Holiness Dalai Lama, sometimes he talks about how people pray to him to please stop the climate change and, balance the environment and the earth. And so he says, well, even if Buddha and God are sitting there talking, and some people are praying to God to stop climate change, and some people are praying to Buddha to stop climate change, but God and Buddha just look at each other and say, you guys created the problem, you fix it. Yeah, to the earthlings who are praying. And His Holiness really uses that. It's a funny story, but to emphasize that, what happens, we are an active player in creating the causes for what we experience. And we have that responsibility. Okay? And so here in the Manjushri prayer, to think of that when we're requesting Manjushri to eliminate the darkness enclosing my mind, awaken my intelligence and wisdom. Well, what do we need to do so that if Manjushri is trying to reach us, the radio waves are going out, but we have to turn on the radio. So what can we do from our side? And that's a really crucial factor, because His Holiness emphasizes again and again that just praying isn't what does it. We have to act. Okay? So when our mind is obscured by our negative karma, then we have to do purification practice with the four opponent powers. When our mind is lacking in merit, it's not very fertile, then, we have to do practices to accumulate merit. When when just the seeds of the Dharma are lacking in our mind, then we have to study and learn the teachings so that those seeds are there. Yeah, it's like planting a garden. Yeah, purification is like taking out all the garbage. Creating merit is like fertilizing the land, and listening to teachers is like planting the seeds, And then, as you continue to practice, then shifts in your mental state will happen. Yeah, you don't sit there and okay, I did all that. Now, when are the realizations coming? Yeah, I just did 3 months Vajrasattva. Now I expect some realizations to pop into my mind. That would be like you water and fertilize and plant the seeds in the garden, and then every day you dig the seeds up to see if they've sprouted yet. Yeah. I always tell people, be content to create the cause. Yeah, because if you create the cause, you're going in the right direction. Then you don't have anything to worry about, as long as you're going in the right direction. Yeah. If you start, having wrong views and your selfishness is increasing, then you're going in the wrong direction. Yeah. But as long as we're doing our best to go in the right direction, be content with that and give yourself a pat on the back and keep going. So I really, this homage to Manjushri is quite special. I have a lot of memories of it. It's one of the first prayers I learned when I went to Asia, when I was studying at the Tibetan Library. Geshe Nawandharge would start all the classes with this prayer. We chanted it in Tibetan. Venerable Chuni is working on a melody. Yeah. So we need to request her, please, to continue. Yeah. Saji. Yeah. Because this this prayer, this homage to Manjushri, there's something quite special about it. Yeah, it's not something that can be chanted in a da 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 manner. It's something that's really coming from the depth of your heart, communicating with Manjushri. So, I wanted to come back. We didn't get to the 7 wisdoms yesterday. Yeah, I was thinking, what did we talk about the whole session? Yeah, we talked about serenity, didn't we? Yeah, the whole session? I did it. Huh? Oh, yeah, and the clear appearance. Okay, well, that's serenity. Okay, so the mantra recitation that we do when we're tired of meditating on the clear appearance, or if you're doing the self-generation, the clear appearance, and divine identity. Okay, so we just went over briefly yesterday the basic recitation, in the front generation, the flat moon disk with D and then Omara Patsana are going clockwise around it. Yeah. If you're doing the self-generation, you can start out like that. Actually, in the self-generation, the visualization at your heart is a little bit more elaborate because you have the Wheel of Swords and so on. But we'll get into that later. Okay, but the 7 wisdoms. Okay, so here, each wisdom, it's like we think wisdom is one thing. Actually, there's many kinds of wisdom, and we need wisdom in a lot of different areas. So the first one is the great or the extensive wisdom, which has no resistance to understanding the meaning of the Buddha's extensive scriptures. Okay. So then we have to ponder, do I ever have resistance to understanding the meaning of the scriptures? Yeah. Do you ever hear teachings and your mind is going, I'm not so sure about that one? Okay. So it isn't that we have to accept everything hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, that's not the mark of being a quote, quote, good Buddhist. There's no catechism that we have to vow allegiance to and accept the totality of. We're encouraged to learn and to think about what we've heard. Okay? Sometimes when we hear the teachings, we may not understand them correctly, and so the resistance is coming because we haven't understood what the Buddha is actually trying to say. Okay? Sometimes that happens because we need more explanation. We also have to be aware that we're working cross-culturally too when we hear teachings, and that sometimes the way things are expressed in one culture don't make so much sense to people in another culture. Okay? Let me give you one example about that, trying not to stray too far from the topic. But we Westerners tend to be very literal, yeah? And if somebody says something, we think it's exactly like that, yeah? And if somebody is saying something that isn't exactly like that, then we consider that lying, okay? Asian culture, it can be different in that respect. You don't always say things directly. Yeah. You say it this way, or you say it that way. And because we're very literal, then we don't really understand what's being said. Or we think this is what the actual meaning is, when actually this is the way you express something in that culture. Okay? Because we tend to be very locked into our own cultures and think that the way of behaving and thinking in our culture is how everybody behaves and thinks, or if they don't, they should. Okay? And it's hard for us to realize our own cultural blindness. Yeah? It can be very hard to realize. So, for example, I was talking one time with one Lama, and and remarking about how, okay, sometimes, people are doing this, and then the teacher says do that, but not all the Tibetans follow the teacher's instructions and do what the teacher said. And he explained to me, in Tibetan culture, if somebody's over here and you want to get them to the middle, you tell them to go to here. Yeah? If you tell them to go to here, then they come to the middle and they understand properly. But if we're here and we hear teachings that say go to here, then we want to go to there. Yeah? And then we get tangled up, and then we look at other people and, well, wait a minute, they're not doing what, the teaching said or whatever, okay? So that's one example of a way in which we may have a cultural blindness to what they're saying, okay? I'll give you another example. When I first went to the monastery in Nepal, there had been a problem with some of the local villagers coming and stealing things. So the monastery had a wall around it. Apparently people were climbing that wall. So what they did is they put glass shards on top of the wall. And I was watching these monks put glass shards on top of the wall. And I thought, they're teaching compassion? And they're putting glass shards on top of the wall to keep the villagers who are poor out. That doesn't seem very compassionate. Okay? So coming from my Western view, that's the way it looked. It took me a while to realize that from their view, they're thinking about the karma of people stealing from the 3 jewels. And the karma of stealing from the Sangha is very heavy. Yeah. So it wasn't just that they wanted to protect their stuff or that they didn't want to share anything with the villagers. It's they wanted also to protect the people from creating that karma of stealing from a monastery. Okay. Another example, I came to, to the Dharma. Raised American, we all believe in democracy, right? Democracy is the best way. We just celebrated the 4th of July. Let's hear it for democracy, okay? And you get to Tibetan culture, and they don't think democracy is the best and the most efficient way of government. Yeah. It's a very interesting culture, the only one I know of, where the leader who had great power wanted to give up their power and have democracy, but the people didn't want it and wanted the leader to stay in power. Totally opposite from us. Yeah? And it really made me think, is democracy always the best way? Is it the most efficient? Does it fit every culture? Yeah, and I really had to think about that. And, it stretched me beyond my own cultural limitations. Okay? So just to realize that sometimes in learning the Dharma, what we don't understand may be due to the way we're looking at things. And it's not that one way's right and one way's wrong, they're just different. Okay, and so we have to develop some flexibility to try and understand things in a different way. Okay, does that make some sense to you? Mm-hmm. Okay. And those kinds of cultural things, they're very hard to realize because I don't know about you, but they're very ingrained. And you grow up in a place and you think everybody functions like that, everybody thinks like that. Yeah. In fact, it's not even a choice. It's just the way it is. And then you go to other countries and other cultures, or even in America, you go to another culture and it's like, well, wait a minute. Now people think really differently here. And there's no right and there's no wrong. And, especially when we're going to let's say Tibetan or Chinese or Thai or whatever culture it is to learn Buddhism. Now it's us that have to adapt, yeah, instead of insisting that in America everybody should adapt to our way of thinking, even though we don't have one way of thinking. Um, it's us who has to adapt to a different way of looking at things. Okay, so resistance. Yeah. So sometimes it's due because we're working cross-culturally or we haven't really understood what the teaching is. And sometimes we may have understood the teaching, but it's something that we haven't thought about before. Yeah. Or maybe something that it's contrary to what we learned when we were children. And even though we like to think that we weren't that influenced by some things that we learned as kids, what we often find when we start to practice Dharma is that some of those things are there lurking in our mind, yeah, and causing obstruction. So, understanding rebirth is one topic like that. You may or may not have been raised thinking about rebirth. How many people here were raised and being very consciously taught that there was rebirth? Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So we come to Buddhism, and rebirth is, right there, it's assumed. And we were never taught that. And we kind of go, well, what's this all about? Yeah. Or, maybe you threw religion out when you were young and you believed that when we die, that was it. There was nothing afterwards. Yeah. I went through that period in my life when I was at school. I just, it's like you die, that's finished, that's it. Yeah, nothingness. Felt very good, very proud of myself coming to that kind of view. Yeah. And then I heard about rebirth, and I was like, oh, I better think about this. Yeah. And as I started thinking about it, it's like, oh, actually, rebirth makes a lot more sense than nothingness. Yeah, nothingness doesn't make much sense. Rebirth does. But I had to sit and, consciously think about it. Okay. Or maybe you were taught when you were little that when you die, you go to either heaven or hell afterwards. Yeah, and God's the one who kind of looks at your chart. Uh, yeah, with the tallies of what you've done. Isn't there a Christmas song like that? Is Nice. Yeah, and it's going to determine if Santa Claus comes and gives you a present. Okay, so you're a kid and you hear that and you think, oh, okay, there's some kind of, somebody's keeping track of what I'm doing. Yeah. Or maybe you were a kid, you were brought up Catholic and you had a fight with your sibling and you were told to go to uh, confession and, confess it to the priest because you were such a horrible child. Yeah, and so you got that in your mind. Yeah, oh, I was so horrible, and God's going to judge me, and the priest is the one who's going to save me by telling me to recite. Yeah, 10 Hail Marys. Is that what you have to do if you fight with your sibling? Okay. The number varies. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you were taught that when you were like 4 or 5 years old. Yeah. And that's kind of, unless you really sit down and think about what you were taught and realize what's still in there lurking around, then when you come to Buddhism and you hear about karma, yeah, you think the karma, Buddha's sitting there tallying what you did right and what you did wrong, and that when you die, Buddha's going to send you to heaven or hell. Okay? And that's totally not what is happening in Buddhism. Totally not a Buddhist idea. But because we learned something similar when we were little, when we hear something in Buddhism about karma, then our mind goes back and it's like, oh dear, now I have to go, who do I confess to? I go to the Lama and confess. And he tells me to recite, it's not just 10 Hail Marys, it's 100,000 Vajrasattva's. Maybe I'll go back to being a Catholic. Yeah. So, yeah. So we're confronted with these kinds of things. And I think it's actually good when in our practice we notice this, because that means we're making progress. When we notice those things that we were taught as kids and now sit down and really clearly think about them, are they logical? Are they reasonable? Yeah. What do I really believe? And so that process of now consciously thinking about something, using reasoning, is really the gateway to opening our mind and clearing up a lot of that stuff that we were taught that hangs in there and makes us feel guilty or stuff like that. Okay? So, yeah, so this whole thing about the great or extensive wisdom, yeah, it eliminates this kind of resistance that comes. Yeah. And so the visualization, okay, and then when you have great and extensive wisdom, you can memorize and understand many things quickly. So in the West, we don't value memorization so well. In Buddhist culture, it's very highly valued because for the first many, many centuries, the doctrine was passed down orally. And so even now, when the little kids enter the monastery, the first thing they do is they memorize all these long treatises. They don't understand any of it, but they memorize it. Our Western education goes, why are you having kids memorize things that they don't understand? This is their fertile time. You should be teaching them math and science and literature and astronomy and not memorizing Abu-gu-gu-ga-ga-ha, Mutu-tu-tu-ri-ra-soha, And so, the educational system, what we think educating a child means is different. Yeah. And so, for their Geshe exams, as they're going through the different stages of classes to get their Geshe degree, they have to recite things in front of the whole um, the whole community, which could be over 1,000 people, or 2,000, or 3,000 people, and everybody's sitting there, and and you put on a special thing, and you dress up for the occasion, but then you have to walk up and down that aisle reciting this text as fast as you can without any mistake, and it's maybe 200 pages long. Okay, so it's very, somebody who can do that is really very respected. Yeah, yeah. And the benefit of being able to memorize these texts is then when you're teaching and you want a quotation, it'll come. Okay. Sometimes you see the teachers, they have to recite a little bit before until they get to the quotation they want, because they learn the whole thing all in one chunk. Yeah. But it's very good. Then when you're sick and you're lying in bed, you can just recite the text to yourself and think about it. So, there's great value in recitation. Okay, so extensive wisdom helps us to memorize and understand things quickly. It also knows the entire meaning of Sutra and Tantra and is able to see the conventional and ultimate natures of all universal phenomena without restriction. Wow! Okay, that means your mind is omniscient. Okay, when you can see all conventional and ultimate natures, how things exist on the appearance level, their conventional nature, how they actually exist, their deeper mode of existence is the ultimate nature. And so you're able to see that, and you're able to understand all the sutras and all the tantras that teach you the method to see all the conventional and ultimate natures. Okay. So it's a great kind of wisdom to have. I mean, just thinking, even you increase it 1%, it's good. So also it's important to understand it's not that we have no wisdom now. Okay? We have the mental factor of wisdom. We have the mental factor of intelligence. Yeah. These are mental factors that need to be nourished, yeah, and expanded. And so that's what we're doing when we're doing these visualizations. So in Buddhism, we're not like totally bereft of any kind of potential for a Buddha. We have the mental factors that, when fully developed, can become the mental factors of a fully awakened one. Okay, it's just we need to develop and nourish these aspects of ourselves. Okay, so the visualization, yeah, from the D and the mantra syllables in Manjushri. Okay, so if you're doing the front generation in the D and the mantra syllables and the Manjushri in front, if you're doing the self-generation as Manjushri, then at your own heart, there's the D and the mantra syllables. Okay, so the orange light rays radiate in all directions, above, sideways, below, everywhere. Yeah, and they go out as far as space indoors exists, So you have to really think big. Yeah, it's not just that the light rays go out, to the end of the forest, or, they go out to that mountain range, those hills over there, and that's it, Or it's not that they just go to Seattle, or that they go to Delhi, or that they even go to the moon, These light rays go through the entire universe, okay? And there's Buddhas and Bodhisattvas all over the place. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're invoking all of their wisdom, yeah, it says Manjushri's wisdom and realizations, but those are the same realizations as all the Buddhas, all the wisdom of all the Buddhas. And all of that is appearing in the form of youthful Manjushri. Okay? So there's a couple of forms of Manjushri. The one that we're doing here is Manjushri Arapatsana. Okay? Youthful Manjushri is sitting in the same position, yeah, with his hand holding the sword. But the left hand, instead of holding the lotus flower with the text on it, is holding the text here. Like, this is my precious text, This is what's in my heart. So that's the youthful Manjushri. Yeah. Don't think that's okay. So some of these Manjushris, that you're invoking their wisdom in the form of these youthful Manjushris. Some are as large as mountains, others as small as sesame seeds, and they pervade the whole space. And even the ones that are as large as mountains, if you look closely, they're all made of tiny, tiny Manjushris. Okay, so there's Manjushris everywhere. Yeah. And all the billions of Manjushris, then, that they're being invoked, they now absorb into you through the pores of your body, uniting with you like snow falling into the ocean. Okay, so either the front generation is invoking the wisdom in the form of Manjushris, or you as Manjushri, you're invoking them, but the result is the same. They're all falling into you, completely filling your body-mind complex. Oh, okay? With all these Manjushris are made of light, so they don't have any problem coming into your body. It's not that they hit your skull and they can't get through it. Yeah. Oh boy, and my thick skull, even Manjushri can't get in. No, it's just, we're working on the level of visualization. All that can happen, Okay? So they unite with you like snow falling into the ocean. When snow hits the ocean, or any body of water, it just melts right in. Yeah. So in that way, all these Manjushris just melt in with us. Yeah. It's not that they're something added on top that, if you turn the fan on, they're all going to blow away. But, they're blending in with who we are. So that your entire body and your nervous system become the nature of clean, clear wisdom light. Yeah, wow. So think of that, oh, my back hurts. Then your back becomes the nature of clean, clear wisdom light. Yeah. Oh, my stomach hurt. It becomes clean, clear wisdom light. Yeah. Yeah. All your sinuses, with your allergies or sinus infections or whatever, it all becomes clean, clear wisdom light. Okay? Yeah. And that light destroys all physical diseases. Yeah, and hindrances to developing great extensive wisdom. So you really think, all my aches and pains go away, all my diseases and illnesses are no longer there. Yeah. And you just imagine, there's this body that isn't, made of these hard and fast stuff, that's completely filled with all these like tiny light beams of Manjushri, everywhere. And you feel that you have generated the great extensive wisdom through concentrating on Manjushri's body. Okay? So you really, spend time like that and really feel that and say to yourself, now I have that wisdom. Yeah. And now I'm just filled with Manjushris. So how I present myself to the world, yeah, I don't have to present myself to the world as how we usually present ourselves. Yeah. No, you have a body that's filled with these light beams of Manjushri. Yeah. And you have wisdom. So you have self-confidence. You present yourself to the world as a person who has self-confidence. Not arrogance. There's a difference between arrogance and self-confidence. Yeah. But you no longer feel like you have to hide away because maybe you'll say something wrong and people will criticize you. Do you know that feeling? Huh? So no, you're there. There's Manjushri inside, and even if you make a mistake, yeah, you have confidence. Even if you make a mistake, yeah, Manjushri doesn't get humiliated and say, "Oh, I made this mistake in front of these people. I was trying to develop self-confidence, and I blew it. And now everybody knows that I know nothing, and I'm so ashamed and humiliated." And you crawl under the table. Come on, does Manjushri think like that? Yeah, I mean, you're filled with Manjushris. If Manjushri makes a mistake, what does Manjushri do? He says, "Thank you for correcting me. Now I learned something." And life continues. And that's it. Yeah. There's no self-centered, "Oh, my reputation is ruined. I said the wrong thing. I created negative karma. I'm going to hell. Nobody respects me. I better keep my mouth shut from now on, otherwise I'll say all sorts of other horrible, wrong things." What's all that stuff that goes on after we make a mistake? That's all self-centered rubbish, isn't it? Yeah. All that talk. Yeah. Do you talk to yourself like that after you make a mistake? Yeah. All of that is just self-centered rubbish. Nobody else is saying that to you. No one else is saying that. We're saying that to ourselves. Yeah. And in doing so, who is center stage? When we sit and beat up on ourselves, yeah, who is center stage? I am. Yeah. So it's just our usual self-centeredness going round and around about me and I and my and mine and exaggerating our importance in the world. I mean, really, do you think, yeah, you say something dumb, do you think everybody in the room, yeah, all, from now on is whenever they see you, that's what they're going to think? Yeah. I mean, come on, give other people a break. Yeah, they're really too busy thinking about themselves. Yeah, they're not going to sit and think about how horrible you are and how stupid you are and how you never do anything right and da 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 da. All that is our own self-created ridiculous drama. Okay? Totally our own drama. And it's rubbish. Yeah, you make a mistake. Is that the cause to crawl under the table and never say anything in a group again? I mean, isn't that a bit extreme? Yeah. So, we have to look at this kind of self-talk that goes on and see really how totally stupid it is. Okay. And so then you practice like Manjushri. Yeah, you made a mistake. Manjushri goes, Thank you for correcting that. I'm glad I learned something. Thank you. And life continues. That's it. There's no more self-drama. Yeah. And Manjushri, not only does Manjushri go, oh my God, what a failure I am, you know? I'm like radiating this golden light and people think I'm really something, and now I said something wrong. Yeah. Now they're all going to think that the golden light is just some lamp, that it's not really coming from me, that this is all a hoax. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure it is. I really don't have this golden light. I'm just a dum-dum. You know, and why are all these people praying to me? And this is horrible. I mean, I've totally lost face. How can I sit on somebody's altar again? You know, so all of a sudden, you know, Manjushri goes poof, and you walk in here, and there's an empty space there, because Manjushri said, "I just can't face the world today. I made a mistake." Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So we just, you know. And then Manjushri not only, you know, goes round and around about how terrible he is, but then he says, and look how selfish I am because I'm going round and around about how terrible I am. Okay, you know, and then beats himself up for being self-centered. Yeah. And then beats himself up for beating himself up for being self-centered. Okay? Yeah. So it's just easier. Put it down. Okay. Then the second kind of wisdom. So, you know, you can do this visualization as long as you like. In one session, you can do all of the wisdoms, or you can do just one or two or whatever you want. There's no prescribed way. Yeah. You can't do it wrong. Yeah. I'm sure you'll find a way to think you're doing it wrong. Okay, the second one. Please, and so we request, you know, in our heart, please inspire me to generate clear wisdom. Yeah. So what are the qualities of clear wisdom? It can understand the subtle and difficult points of the Dharma without confusion. Okay, so for example, the detailed and subtle points of emptiness and dependent arising. Whoa. Okay. In working on these series of books with His Holiness, boy, I could use some of that wisdom, because some of the points are subtle and they're confusing, and I go round and around, and I have to research and talk to a bunch of different people, and I'm still, you know, it's difficult. So, boy, this kind of wisdom that knows, you know, the subtle details and the difficult points without getting confused, that would be useful. Yeah. Don't you think? Huh? Okay. So here, for the clear wisdom, we're invoking again Manjushri's all the wisdom of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout the universe. And here it's coming into us in the form of the syllables Omara Patanadi and the Sanskrit vowels and consonants. So you know the Sanskrit vowels and consonants because you recite the blessing of the speech every morning. Yeah. And then Omara Patanadi. And so all these letters, again, they're radiant and brilliant, you know. They look like there's something, but if you go into them, there's nothing there. Yeah. There's no light bulb inside that's emitting the light. There's just the light. Okay. And so all these syllables then, you know, come showering into you and filling you. And you think, you know, now I have the clear wisdom. I can understand the subtle and difficult points. of all the teachings. Okay. Then the third one, here we're requesting, and so the request part is important. We're really saying, I request this kind of wisdom. I want to have this wisdom. So here it's to generate quick wisdom. So the quick wisdom quickly cuts off all ignorance, wrong conceptions, and doubt. Yeah? So if you're a person that suffers a lot from doubt, yeah, you can't make up your mind. And I'm not just talking about, one kind of doubt is you can't make up your mind whether to buy these shoes or those shoes. Okay, that's not the kind of doubt we're talking about here. But it would be nice to be a little bit more decisive so you don't waste your time trying to figure out which shoes to buy. You just buy a pair and wear them. But, especially about Dharma points, sometimes we hear something and then we go, I don't know, could be this, could be that. Why do they say this? This Buddhist tradition says this, that Buddhist tradition says that, this one, huh? I don't know. Will somebody tell me the one right answer? Forget it. Okay? Because the whole process is designed to make us think, okay? And to make our mind flexible. And sometimes, we see, wow, this viewpoint makes sense, and that viewpoint makes sense. Yeah. But that's different than doubt. Doubt is where we just sit there and we're immobilized. Yeah. It's like, I can't figure it out. I can't make sense. So, I can't do this practice. I'm doing Manjushri practice, and I really can't understand why he's holding that sword up like that. Or, whatever it is. We find who knows what to doubt. Yeah. Oh, I'm doing Manjushri practice, but I was doing Chenrezi before, and now I'm doing Manjushri. So, is that right? Is that wrong? Is Chenrezi going to feel ignored? Yeah, because now I'm praying to Manjushri? Or do I do some Chenrezi practice every day and some Manjushri practice every day? How do I put those two together? Or maybe I should do none of them, or maybe I have to pick one, or maybe I do Chenrezi practice, but I imagine Manjushri's falling into me, or I do Manjushri practice and Chenrezis are falling into me, or what do I do? It's like, and I can't do any practice until I figure this out. Okay? Yeah. And so they say this kind of doubt, it's called deluded doubt. Yeah. It's not the doubt that is curiosity, that wants to learn and discover. That kind of doubt is good. This is deluded doubt. And they say it's like a two-pointed needle. You have a needle with 2 points. Can you sew? No. Okay. So doubt is a hindrance. Yeah, on the path, and it's something we have to work to overcome. Okay, so one of them were doubts, wrong conceptions. We are chock-a-block full of wrong conceptions. Yeah, and as you practice, one of the beautiful things is you see your wrong conceptions more clearly. You might say, oh, but I don't want to see my faults. It's so painful. Actually, it's good when we see our faults because now we can start to dismantle them. When we can't see them, they're still there and still adversely affecting us, but we can't do anything about them. Yeah. So you begin to notice. Yeah. You hear in teachings about, let's say, the 4 distortions. And so the first distortion is we see things that are impermanent as permanent. And we go, yeah, whoever sees things that way? We know everything's changing. Yeah, we went to science class in 3rd grade. We know everything's changing all the time. I don't have that wrong kind of conception. But then you watch, yeah, and somebody dies and you go, how did that happen? Yeah? Why did that person die? It was so unexpected. Yeah? It wasn't supposed to happen. I remember when my brother called me to tell me my dad died. The first thought was, but I spoke to him yesterday. And I didn't say that because I realized how stupid it was, you know. But wasn't that interesting that the first thought was, I spoke to him yesterday, because I had in my mind the image, not just that my dad wouldn't die, but that when he died, because he was having all these he would like black out from time to time and fall to the ground. And I thought that was how he was going to die. He would black out, he would wind up in the hospital, incapacitated, with tubes, and then we would be stuck with, what do we do? And is he going to get better? But he can't get better, and there's brain damage. And that's how I thought he would die. But that wasn't how he died. Yeah. They were celebrating his 93rd birthday, and he choked on a piece of steak. Boing! The whole way I had imagined it was totally wrong, And I had just spoken to him the day before. Remember, we all called him because my dad had been up here. The nuns loved my dad. And we sang him part of the 37 practices of bodhisattvas for his birthday because he liked the melody. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. It's like when you're 93. So, yeah. But this is, you can see going on in your mind. Yeah? Something happens, and we're so surprised it happened. How could that happen? Yeah. And yet we talk, oh yes, everything's impermanent, and we're all going to die, and we don't know when it is. Okay? We're even surprised at the smallest things. Yeah? When you spill spaghetti sauce on your clean clothes. Yeah? You ever done that? Yeah? Or maybe it's not spaghetti sauce, it's something else. It's that chili on the strawberries. And you spill it all on your nice clean clothes. And it's like, oh, this is terrible. How can that happen? Quick, we got to clean it up. And it's like, as soon as you have clean clothes, they're in the process of getting dirty. But every time they get dirty in a major way, we are surprised that wasn't supposed to happen. Yeah? Is this what you think? Does that kind of stuff surprise you? Oh, I just washed it. Yeah, I wasn't going to wash it for another few days. And first thing I did was spill spaghetti sauce all over. Yeah? So there's so many things like that. So in your daily life, yeah, you start to notice these kind of wrong conceptions. That verbally you have the right conception, but what's really going on inside is everything is static. Everything is predictable. Yeah? Unpredictable things don't happen. Yeah. And then unpredictable things happen every single day. Okay? Most of them are small, so we adjust. But sometimes they're bigger, and we're just so taken aback. Okay? So, these kinds of wrong conception, the wrong conception of our body, thinking that somehow we're going to make our body clean. We think our body is clean and beautiful. Yeah, don't we? Yeah, body is beautiful. There's a whole movement on that. Yeah. And so I'm not talking about shaming our body. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying our body is evil and sinful. Okay. So I'm not saying that, but what the Buddha did point out is our body makes everything dirty. Yeah? As soon as our body touches something, we consider that dirty. Hmm? Don't we? Yeah? If somebody else puts a spoon in their mouth, we have to wash it before we use it. If somebody else ate off a plate, we have to wash it. Yeah? We wear clothes, we sweat, we make the clothes dirty. Yeah? So our body makes everything dirty. And everything also makes our body dirty. It's really strange. Our relationship with food, okay? If we touch the food with our hands, we make the food dirty. But if the food touches our hand, the food makes our hand dirty. Have you ever thought about it? Yeah? But that's how we think, isn't it? Yeah? Kind of, this thing touched my hand, now my hand's dirty. But if I touch it, oh, now I've made it dirty, we can't serve it to somebody else.
Actually, we do.
You're turning red. The truth comes out. Okay. So, we're always washing this body, but whatever our body touches, we make it dirty. Yeah. Even the bath towel that we use to dry our clean body becomes dirty after it dries our body. Yeah? Okay. So we begin to notice these kinds of conceptions that we have. Yeah? That somehow by washing our body again and again, we're finally going to make it clean. Yeah? Is this body ever going to get clean? Can you take out your liver and wash it? Yeah. If you took out your liver, do you look at your liver and like, oh, is that gorgeous? Yeah. If you saw your own liver, yeah. Yeah. It's like, what you should do next time you have a colonoscopy? Yeah. Don't have the anesthetic and watch on the screen. Yeah. Watch on the screen. Then you know what the inside of your body, at least the inside of your intestine looks like. Yeah. And then they take pictures sometimes. Yeah. Oh, what a gorgeous large intestine. It's purple and red, brown, slimy. Yeah. And then you begin to see, well, actually, this is what the body is. It's just a bunch of organic goo. Warm organic goo. Yeah. It sounds terrible, but isn't that the truth? Yeah. So I'm not saying we hate our body. Yeah, hating the body doesn't do any good, but let's just recognize it for what it is and, not overestimate it like, this body is just fantastic and it's going to bring me ultimate happiness. Because we've been trying since we were born to make this body perfect and give it all the pleasure it wants. Is it ever satisfied? Never. Okay. We never look the way we think we should look. We never have enough pleasure that we think we should have. Yeah. So running after that kind of stuff is just, takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and doesn't really have a big payoff. Yeah? So we're practical, aren't we? Why do something that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money? It takes a lot of money to take care of this body and give it pleasure. Yeah? I mean, you have to make a reservation at a Marriott hotel where they charge how much a night? Yeah? To stay overnight at some hotel, $200 or $300 sometimes. Yeah? So that you can clean on sheets. You can sleep on sheets that you make dirty. Yeah. And you know enough about the environment that then you leave them a note. Please don't change my sheets, because you know how much water is consumed by changing the sheets in the hotels every day. So you leave them a note. So then it's just like being at home, where you sleep on the same sheets every day and you're asleep so you don't even notice it. Yeah. How did I start talking about that? Um, yes, wrong conceptions of this body. Okay, and how difficult it is to bring everlasting happiness to this body, because the body's nature is, look at it for what it is. That's the body's nature. And our mind's nature, the nature of attachment, which we're, of course, trying to purify our mind, but we have it right now. The nature of attachment is dissatisfaction. Yeah? And so our body is one of the things we're always dissatisfied with. Now, are you dissatisfied with your body? Would you like to change certain things about your body? Yeah? Yeah. When you're young, you want your body to be shaped different. When you're old, you just want to have a young body. You don't care how it's shaped anymore. but but then if you have that young body, it doesn't bulge in the right places, and it bulges in the wrong places. Better go to the gym and work out and, make this body different. And okay. So wrong conceptions. We're purifying all that kind of stuff. 4, please inspire me to generate profound wisdom, which understands the meaning of the scriptures in a profound, limitless way. Okay, when you sit down to read a Dharma book, you get what it's saying, and you get not just the superficial meaning, but those words, like you can go deep. They open something up for you that you haven't understood before. Yeah. And this is why it's very important to hear teachings on the same topic many, many times, to read the texts again and again, because we don't just understand things on the first hearing or the first reading. Yeah. The more we hear something, the more we read something, the meaning opens up to us. Yeah. In a way that we never thought of when we had read it before. So it's really kind of interesting sometimes when you read something and then it's like, oh, wow, is that what it's been saying? Okay, so that's the profound wisdom. And here, to help us gain this profound wisdom, what we're invoking all the wisdom of the Manjushri and all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the form of swords and texts. Okay, so Manjushri's implements. Okay. So when the swords and texts are falling into you, the swords are not cutting you. Okay, the texts are not clobbering you on the head. Yeah, but you really think, because the sword represents cutting down these wrong conceptions. Yeah, so that we can see conventional and ultimate truths correctly. That's why the sword has it's sharp on two sides, conventional side, ultimate side, and the text, and we think that we're gaining all the wisdom of the text too. Okay, so if you're studying a particular text, then you think that text in particular is falling into you as you're saying the mantra. Okay, then 5, please inspire me to generate the wisdom of explaining or teaching the Dharma, which can perfectly explain the definite, correct understanding of all the words and meanings of the scriptures. Wow, So you want to explain the Dharma, even to your friend, your relative asks you, oh, what's Buddhism about? Yeah, and you want to be able to say something that makes sense. Yeah, and sometimes all of a sudden we're tongue-tied. What do I say? They say, what's Buddhism all about? And then you go, do I talk about rebirth? Do I talk about the 3 jewels? Do I talk about emptiness? Do I talk about karma? Do I talk about compassion? What do I do? What is Buddhism all about? I don't really know myself, And plus, what do I tell other people? What is a skillful way? Yeah, your relative who is a born-again Christian asks you what Buddhism is about. Yeah, what do you tell them? You start out, well, we don't believe in God. No, that's not how you start out. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. No, you start out by saying, you don't mention God at all. Yeah. What you talk about is love, compassion, and forgiveness. Yeah. In Buddhism, what is important is that we really cherish all living beings. Yeah, we want them to be happy and have happiness in its causes. That's love. We meditate a lot on compassion, wanting them to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. That's what Buddhism is about. We want to really be of benefit to all living beings and make a positive contribution to society. We believe in forgiving people who have wronged us instead of holding grudges. Yeah, so you talk about this to your newly born again Southern Baptist relative, and they go, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, we believe the same things. Yeah. So that's the skillful way to respond. Yeah. You don't start out telling people, that what they believe is hogwash. That's that isn't effective, and it's also very rude. Yeah, it's very rude. What?
I said to my mother, she was asking me what you believe in, and I said to my mother, we don't believe in God. She was like, oh, it just makes me scared to think about that. And then I said, well, it just makes me happy to think about
Going back to the quick wisdom for a second, when we visualize the Om Ahom, are those inside Manjushri's body or are those disembodied Om Ahom?
No, they're just the syllables. They're not inside Manjushri's body. Similarly with the texts and the swords, they're free. Free falling. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this one, the wisdom of explaining or teaching the Dharma, knowing how to explain things in a way that makes sense to your particular audience. Yeah, and this is something, there's a couple of factors here. One is understanding the teaching correctly ourselves. Okay. so that if you're asked to teach something, you can explain it in a clear way. If you can't explain it, you don't feel comfortable talking on that topic, say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about that topic. Let's make the title something different. If, they're asking you to go teach in a place. Or if your friend asks you a question, you respond according to your knowledge. If they ask you a question that you can't answer, then you say, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I'm still learning too, and I'll go research it for you, or I'll ask my teacher or somebody else who has studied more than I have, and then I'll get back to you. So if somebody asks you something you don't know, don't worry about it. Don't feel humiliated. You just say, I'm sorry, I don't know. Okay? Sometimes people, if you happen to be giving a talk to a group, people will ask a personal question as if it is a general question. Okay? So they'll ask a question like, well, how do you practice fortitude when you're married to somebody who's really disagreeable? Okay. So somebody asks a question like that. So, yes, they're asking about how to practice fortitude, but what they're saying is, I'm married to somebody who's disagreeable, and I don't know what to do. Okay. So when somebody is asking a personal question like that about their own situation, don't try and answer it when you're talking to a group. Yeah? Because to answer a personal question, you need to talk to that person and hear about exactly what is going on in their life. Yeah? Because if you don't know what's going on in their life, and you answer the question, it could not be the right answer for that person. Okay? So, for example, somebody says, how do I practice fortitude and forgiveness when you're married to somebody who's just, who has a hot temper? Yeah. So you could then, talk about, forgiving that person and seeing that person's suffering and so on and so forth. But maybe what you don't know is the person who's asking the question is experiencing domestic violence and they're getting beaten. So it's not just that their partner has a hot temper. It's they're getting beaten and there's violence being inflicted upon them. So in that case, if you talk just about, forgiveness on a general level, this person is going to get the idea, okay, I just forgive them, honey, you beat me last night, I forgive you. And, if you beat me tonight, well, I'll forgive you again tomorrow. That's ridiculous. So you have to know exactly what that person's situation is. And if somebody says, I'm getting beaten at home, you say, then you pack your suitcase and you leave. You can still practice forgiveness. You don't have to be angry at that person, but you don't stay in a situation where you're getting beaten. Yeah. With a question in a group, yeah, I say to them, and I did this in Australia, just recently. I say, I can tell from what you're doing that you're actually asking a personal question, and it isn't fair for me to give an answer to a group without knowing really the details of your situation, because I may not say something that is actually fitting for your situation. So, please come see me later. Or, please, talk to another teacher or talk to a therapist. Sometimes people will ask you questions, that are way beyond the scope of Dharma. And you see what they need to go to therapy. And you say, please see a therapist, see a coach or a counselor, and you try and steer them to the actual person who can help them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I have a friend who studied Tibetan Buddhism for a while, and she used to get beaten up by her husband. And she said that the geshe there, I think, he was a teacher, he said to stick with it. And so I'm wondering, has it ever been done in the past, or, maybe...
Did he know that she was getting beaten?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that's one factor. Another factor is sometimes men don't understand what it's like to be a woman who's getting beaten. The geshe, even if, first of all, he may not have known. Second of all, even if he knew, maybe he thought the husband was just slapping her. Yeah, not gut punching her, or, giving her a black eye. Or sometimes they don't understand family dynamics. That is often quite... even in our own culture, men don't understand what it's like to be a woman who gets beaten at home. Yeah? And they'll say, he's your husband. You promise to be faithful. You stick with him. If you keep on being kind, he'll change. Yeah, even in our culture, people will give that kind of advice. Yeah? I never say that to a woman who's getting beaten. Yeah? Yeah? You get out of the situation, then you can talk to him, and, and you can see if you can reconcile. But don't stay in a situation where you and your kids are getting whacked up. Yeah? But sometimes that's hard for a woman to hear. Yeah? Because her family wants her to stay with him. Yeah? So it's embarrassing for the family if she leaves. She doesn't have the financial resources. Yeah? Or she'll have to go to a homeless shelter, and they aren't always the nicest places to be. So there's lots of times it's quite difficult for somebody to leave that situation. Or she's fond of him, but she doesn't know how to say, yes, I care about you, but you cannot do this to me. Yeah? And so the relationship needs some kind of counseling and some kind of, he needs to know what he can do and can't do. Yeah? So these kinds of things are difficult. We can't always give a simple Dharma answer to something that's very complex when we don't know, Okay? So, so I'm not afraid in those situations to say, the situation is complex. I can't ask you the personal details here. Yeah, see me afterwards, or even if I can tell, if I talk to that person even briefly afterwards, this is a situation where you need to see a professional, that's the kind of help you need. Yes, meditation will help you to calm your mind, but in addition to meditation, you also need, some profession, to see a professional. Mm-hmm.
An example recently, because this sometimes comes up in the UU classes,
Mm-hmm.
is there was a person in the class last week. There was three people who were good friends, and two of them were having a very conflicted relationship. This person who was in the room had known both of them, particularly one, very, very well. We were talking about how we label people friend, enemy, and stranger. So it wasn't, he came to the conclusion that said, if I just think of my friend as being this great guy that I've had in my life who I can tell things to and stuff like that, and he's having a conflict with this friend, he has to be all or nothing. So he went through the process of saying, if I'm going to be a good friend, I've got to be able to see my whole friend good, bad, and not infallible. And he said, and once I calm down, I will be settled enough to speak to him about that, what this upset me about. But he just was talking out loud. We weren't fixing the issue, but he was trying to, and I said, to be a good friend, you've got to be willing to see your friend not in the best of light, and in a good light, and to see the whole person, not just label them as friend and then you throw them into the enemy category because you did something that you didn't like. But every once in a while, we have folks in the group just want to give us, how do I work with my mind
Yeah.
in this situation?
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of a balancing act to not get personal, but yet it's a good general. It's a question that
Yeah. Sometimes you can give something general and say, but I know you're talking about a specific situation. So what I say may not fit. Yeah. Or you just say, I'd really, if somebody's just talking out loud, you let them talk out loud. You don't have to comment on it. But really, when you don't know all the details that are you know, that's that are going on, it could be difficult. You know. Somebody says, "Oh, well, I have a really good friend, but he's not doing something completely above, or he's doing something now that isn't really very above board. So what do I do?" Yeah. Now you don't know. Is that friend, buying and selling weapons under the table, or is that friend, you know, sneaking into the theater without paying for their ticket? There's different degrees of not doing things above board. Yeah. So if you answer one way or another way, the guy isn't paying for the ticket, and you say, well, and you're thinking, oh, they're an arms dealer under the surface selling guns to who knows who. And you say, well, you better call the police. That's not going to fit the situation. Yeah.
is to say, well, I don't know the situation with your friend, but one of the things as far as spiritual practice goes for you is to be really clean and clear what you do that is above board and not above board, or to make it more of a
Yeah, but that's not answering their question. That's giving an answer about how they should practice ethical discipline. But they're wondering, what do I do about my friend?
Okay.
So it's a way of answering the question that they may feel, okay, at least somebody didn't brush me off, but you're not really answering their question.
We get these questions.
Yeah, for sure you do. And that's why you sometimes have to stay in that situation. Yeah. This is, and also, sometimes you say, well, I need to know more to know how to answer your question. And then the person wants to start telling their whole life story, and you're with a group of 30 or 40 people. And that's just not appropriate because when you're there, you have to take care of the whole group, not just the one person. So, then you have to say something like, I see this is a really important issue for you, and you're really conflicted about it. But right now, there's a group here, and we have to include everybody in how we're answering. So let's talk about this later. Okay? Yeah. It's, because in different situations, you are playing different roles. Yeah, and when you are responsible for a group, you have to take care of the whole group. You can't drop the group and focus on one person's problem for the entire 30 minutes of the Q&A session, because that's not fair to that person, and it's not fair to the whole group either. Okay, so it's, yeah. Okay.